Hello everyone. So we are in the series How to Write for Premier Journals and covering all the important topics so far. What are premier journals? Why manuscript fail? What are the expectations of the editors and reviewer? We are covering the anatomy of the articles in detail. So far we have covered how to write a title, how to write an abstract, how to write an introduction, and how to do the theoretical underpinning in a research article. Now we are covering the research methodology part, and we have covered the two sections so far now. Uh, on the channel, you can find it as the section 6.3. So let's move ahead, and we are going to cover and we will move forward covering all the relevant sections of the research article. So, referring to the previous video, we have covered the basics of research methodology, like as in bird eye view, what are the types of research methodology or research methods, or what are the types of research whenever we talk about articles in Premier Journal. Then we have covered and seen some examples that how a research methodology should look whenever we are writing for very good top renowned journals like ABDC, and whenever we are talking about the premier journals like Emerald, Elsevier, Taylor and Francis, Wiley. Now, most of the time we are confused as a researcher. What should be the structure? Whenever we are writing a research article, what structure we should adopt? Now, the first is we should talk about the approach, which approach we are adopting. Then we should talk about the instrumentation part, then the data collection procedure and the data analysis procedure. So whenever you are confused what structure you should follow, note this structure. First discuss about approach, then discuss about instrument, which particular instrument you are using, what is the data collection procedure, and what is the data analysis procedure. Let's cover each and every section in detail so that we are clear, and let's look at some article examples from the research articles as well so that it is clear to us that exactly what we are talking. Let's discuss about the approach first. So the approach specifies the overall research approach adopted in the study. It clearly aligns the approach with the nature of research questions and objectives. So let's note that whenever we are discussing that we have adopted this particular approach in our research paper, we have to immediately align it with the research questions and objectives. If we can cite some references from the previous papers as well, that will be great. So it will make it robust that okay, in the similar nature of the studies, a few authors have also done it, and we feel that for our research objectives this methodology is also good, or this approach is also good. Now, what are the types of approaches? Let's have a look. So majorly the first type of approach is conceptual. Okay, so either you will be or we will be theory synthesizing, or we will be adopting a theory. It might be a typology paper, or it might be a model development paper. Okay, so we have to first talk about the approach in our whenever we are writing a research methodology. Then we have to talk about if it is a quantitative, what kind of approach is this? Is this experimental or is it a service based design? What exactly it is? If we talk of if it is a qualitative research article, or doing the qualitative research design, or adopting a qualitative research way, what are we doing? Are we doing an in-depth interviews, or we are doing a focused discussions? What exactly we are doing? If it is a review article, whether it's a bibliometric analysis or framework based reviews, we have to discuss this in detail. Okay, so we have to be very clear about it. So just to revise, the whenever we are writing a research methodology, let's start with approach. Which particular approach the research article has adopted? It can be conceptual, quantitative, qualitative, review, whatever our paper is all about. So the first we are going to talk about the approach whenever we are writing a research methodology. Let's have a look at some of uh, the different types of scholarly research articles. So, our paper either can be a literature review, it can be a conceptual article, it can be a qualitative one, right? So, these are the approaches which we adopt. It can be empirical, so if you sometimes we call it as an empirical, it can be qualitative or quantitative both. Or if it is a quantitative, what kind of research way it is, whether it's a non-experimental one or experimental ones, right? If it is a experimentation, we have to discuss in detail what exactly we are doing, how it is aligning with our research objectives, and what are what is the way how we are doing it, whether we are doing a survey or we are collecting the data from a secondary data source, right? So we have to discuss this thing in detail if it's a non-experimental one. If it is an experimental one, how we are doing it, what is the non-literature primary sources of data which we are going to refer, right? What we are checking, we must be checking some causal or control for cause and effect relationships. So we have to align our research objective with what we are doing and what kind of paper we are writing: literature review, conceptual, qualitative, quantitative, or an empirical one covering qualitative and quantitative both the aspects. So we have to be very, very clear about it. Specifically talking about conceptual paper, what are we doing? Whether we are doing a theory synthesis, if it is a theory synthesis, we have to be very clear about the conceptual integration across multiple theoretical perspectives, and further how we are doing it. If it is a theory adaptation, again how we are doing it, right? The what are the major considerations which we are doing? If it is a typology paper wherein we are categorizing the variants of concepts as distinct points, again what is the approach we are adopting and how we are doing it? We have to clarify it whenever we are writing a research methodology. And then the model, if it is a in the conceptual research design, if it's a or in conceptual paper, if you're doing a model development wherein you are building a theoretical framework that predicts the relationship between the constructs, then how you are doing it. So it we should be very, very clear on this part, everyone. So this is in brief about conceptual paper. All the references are given in at the bottom of every slide, as well as I'll try to give it in the description so that you can refer to these papers if you want to read them in detail. Coming to the quantitative research designs, we have to clearly state the data source, whether our data is taken from a primary data source or primary data, or the research, that is we have collected the data from a few like fresh respondents, or it is a secondary data source that we are just harnessing the existing data that is available, of course citing the source of the data. Now we have to write about the temporality, that is whether our data is cross sectional or longitudinal. It is majorly done in finance researches, that sometimes or in panel data, like how they are doing, whether it's a cross sectional one or a longitudinal one. It is also done in the control experiment based researches as well, but we have to specify it in the research methodology how we are doing it. And then comes the causality, whether it's experimental or non experimental, and further in detail we have to elaborate it in research methodology part if it's a quantitative article or a quantitative research article. Now if it's a qualitative one, again a few things about we have to discuss in detail. If it's an archival one, how to do it and how to write it, we have to specify that. If it's an in-depth interview, we have to specify that. If it's a focus one or an observation, we have to clearly indicate that. So we should have a brief knowledge about it. Coming to the role, information sharing and management commitment, just a research article to give you a look So we are taking this example since the beginning. Can we have a look at this? That in the very first three lines, the researcher has clearly indicated what research methodology they are adopting. So a deductive research approach using a quantitative research questionnaire survey, right? So can we have a look here? So it's a deductive approach using the quantitative questionnaire survey. Okay, so it's a quantitative research using a survey. The research methodology. So can we see here the researcher has clearly indicated in the very first three lines what is the approach they are adopting. So they are adopting a deductive research approach using a quantitative questionnaire survey. Now deductive research approach we will not talk, we have already discussed that in one of our previous video. And they are using a quantitative questionnaire survey for this study, and first comprise a literature review and a self-administered survey. So in the very first two lines, how precisely and concisely it's clearly indicated that what the researcher is doing. Now, what the researcher should mention next. So they should be mentioned about the instrumentation part, and we all should be very cautious whenever we are doing it. So instrumentations refers to the process wherein we develop, select, and using the tools to measure the variables and collect data. So sometimes we adopt a questionnaire which some other researcher has already used, so we adopt in that case. Sometimes we develop by our own, so we have to submit it as a attachment. We can submit it as a appendix in a research article, so that the editors and reviewers can also see that how you are attempting to measure these variables which we are addressing in our research article. While a research instrument is a physical and digital tools itself, so physical, we can take a printout and distribute like we used to do it majorly in the earlier times, like 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years back. But now we are using the digital tools like Google Forms, like MS Forms. So various forms are available. Some other tools are also available, like Qualtrics, like SurveyMonkey. So there are various ways. So the research instrument can be in physical form, like in paper, you take a printout and share it with your respondents, or it can be via the digital tool like I have just shared. So a survey, it can be, of course, a survey. Instrumentation encompasses methodology behind it, including calibration, validation, administration. So we have to be very, very cautious, and we have to indicate in the research methodology how we have calibrated it, how we have validated its reliability and validity, and how we are going to administer it in the research article. We have to clearly indicate. So what it does, it design a source of questions in the interview guide and questionnaires or secondary sources. So here we have to mention clearly in the methodology, because it clearly indicates in our paper that what exactly we have used, whether we have used a questionnaire, whether it's a primary uh, you know uh, data source based research or a secondary data source based research. So what exactly it is, so we have to clearly indicate that. What are the key components? So first is instrument selection and development. So we have already indicated, either we develop the questionnaire or we adopt it from some previous researchers. So the researchers must choose between an existing standardized tool by, of course, proper citations, or creating a new by our own self. And most of the time we have to attach it as an appendix, so that we validate that and we share it with the reviewers or editors. Existing tools often save time and come with established credibility, while the new tools must be meticulously piloted, and we have to check the reliability and validity in that case. So validity, we all know, we have to check the content validity, the construct validity, and reliability. So the validity, we all know, it is the degree of uh, to which an instrument actually measures what it claims to measure. So first we have to check the content validity, wherein it ensures the tool covers the entire scope of the topic, and construct validity confirms that actually the tool is accurately measuring and reflecting the theoretical concept being studied. For example, intelligence or anxiety. What about reliability? So we have to measure the reliability as well in case we are developing a tool. So the consistency of the results we have to check. If some group is tested twice under the same conditions, a reliable instrument should yield the similar score. Okay, so we often use it by cronbach alpha, but nowadays there are so many ways. So whatever we are doing in our research article, we have to indicate it, that whether we have, what instrument we have used, how we have collected the data, if it is a survey, how we have floated it, if it is a primary data, we have to indicate entire process, if it is a secondary data, we have to cite in the sources and how it is connected to the construct which we are measuring, and how it is getting connected to the research objectives. Then the last comes the operationalization, the process of defining the abstract concept into the measurable terms. So of course we have to connect it to our research objective which we have just indicated. So in case of quantitative, majorly it's structured surveys or lab devices, or lab devices are specifically done in the research areas like biotech, like wherein they do the control experiments daily and then recording the data. In qualitative researches, there are semi-structured interviews, focus groups, and sometimes the field notes which we make. Nowadays, while interviewing, we can record the transcripts if the respondents are okay with that, without, of course, any identifiable information. They are sometimes subject completed questionnaires that we just float the links and they themselves do it. Sometimes the researcher completed the observation forms, the interview guides, the tally sheets, right? So we might be collecting the data, but parallelly we are, filling in what we are seeing as an observer, right? So these kind of researcher often takes place in terms of some researchers, like let's say if we are doing some research that how the customers behave in a retail store, and we are sitting behind the cameras and just observing the customers, that how they are behaving towards a particular product or towards a particular area. So now let's have a look how it is done. So this is the example which we are taking since the starting, and let's have a look at it. So here the researcher is clearly indicating that the questionnaire developed was pilot among 5 procurement professionals to validate the variable derived from the literature review. These professionals were chosen for their expertise in the procurement activities, with the selection criteria including professional qualifications, a minimum of 15 years of experience in the industry, and a background in public sectors, particularly procurement. So in addition, can we see how the researcher is indicating in these professionals, and how they are collecting the data? A configured close-ended questionnaire was developed, leveraging a 5-point Likert scale, like strongly disagree, strongly agree. So this is how we have to write whenever we are talking about an instrumentation part. So that's in brief about instrumentation and the second part of the structured approach we are talking about. Let's talk about the rest of the approach in the upcoming videos. Thank you so much.